Now that we've created the wintry background, we can go ahead and start working on the snowman. But before I do that, I'm going to do one step that will help me sort of keep things organized and not get all jumbled up. I'm going to go ahead and select this top layer. For me, it's the very front hill layer. I'm going to hold down Shift and select the sky layer, which gets everything in between selected. I have basically the entire scene selected right now. And I'm going to click on this one and just drag the whole thing down onto this folder icon right here. And when I release it, it'll put all of those different layers inside this folder, which I'm going to go ahead and rename to sort of winter background. I can still get to them, but now I can sort of minimize them and get them out of the way so I can have more space to work on my snowman. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our snowman. I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. We'll call this bottom snowman. I'm going to grab my ellipse tool. Don't forget that's nested with the rectangle tool, but what you're probably going to see instead is the custom shape tool, because it's probably the last thing you used in this group. So click and drag, get the ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw my first ellipse. If I wanted to make it completely circular, I would hold down Shift. But for the bottom of this snowman, I actually don't want that. I want it to be a little bit wider than it is tall. So I'm going to get something about that size. I'm going to go ahead and double click on the bottom snowman layer over here away from the text. I do that a lot by accident. If I click over here, I open up my layer styles again. We're going to add a couple layer styles. We're going to go ahead and add the inner glow, and we'll make sure that and I always forget this part, you need to actually click over here to open up the options for inner glow. So you can turn something on without actually going to it, which is sort of confusing. So I'll go to the inner glow options and set it to screen. We'll put the opacity about 75%. Oops, I keep doing that. I shouldn't press enter. So back down to inner glow, 75%. I made the color sort of a light blue. The size will make probably about 10 pixels, and the range will be about 50. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and also add on not a pattern overlay, a gradient overlay. And you'll see what I've done here is I went ahead and did sort of a light purple, still sort of cold feeling, but sort of contrasting a little bit with the blues in the background. So I did a radial gradient, so it's going to be going out circularly, and all I've done is sort of a light lavender blue, purple rather, to a white. And then once again, you can play with the angles and get them the way you like them. But one thing that will probably be different on your screen is that it will probably be more centered. And while I have this menu open, I can just come right down here. And I think it looks better if I just sort of move it over to the side here, so that it's not completely 100% in the middle. It just adds a little bit more realism to it. So now I have my first bottom part of the snowman, and I'm going to go up to layer, and I'm going to duplicate layer. This will pop up, and I'm just going to go ahead and change this to, or maybe I'll say middle snowman. And so now I have two layers. Right now they're exactly on top of each other, which isn't going to work very well for me. So I'm going to go ahead and press Control T. It's going to bring up my free transform tools, and now I can just go ahead and drag this up. So I'll bring it up to about here. I'm going to hold down Shift while I make it a little bit smaller. Holding down Shift will sort of keep the aspect ratio locked, so it'll stay as tall and wide as it is on the bottom there. And when I like the way it looks, I'm going to go ahead and press Enter, and it will retain that layer styling I had. Of course, I'm going to do this one more time. So another way to do this is just to take this and drag it down to the new layer icon down here. So now I have a third one, and of course I'll call this top snowman. Once again, it's pasted directly on place, so I'm going to press Control T. Then I can just bring it up here, and this time I actually want more of a perfect circle. So I'm going to actually, for the head, make it look more circular. I'm going to line it up where I want it and press Enter. And now I have the three parts of my snowman. To make things a little bit easier to see, I'm going to go ahead and minimize all these effects down here so I don't have to see them in the layers panel. And it might not be a bad idea for me to go ahead and select all three layers and drag them down to a little folder and just call this snowman body. Just sort of get them out of the way, makes it easier to work. The next piece is going to be to make one of the buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom in by pressing Control plus. I'm going to zoom into the middle part of the snowman. I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, which I still have, make a new layer. I'll just call this button dash bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a button right about here. Once again, it's going to be a little bit longer than it is wide, so it won't be a perfect circle. It's more of an ellipse. And actually, let's go a little bit bigger than that, something more along the lines of that. And I'm going to open up the layer styles by double-clicking. And we're going to be doing a new one this time. We're going to be doing what's called a drop shadow. So that's at the bottom here. And you see right away what that does is it actually adds a shadow underneath of the button to give it a little bit more realistic feel. So we're going to go ahead and keep it multiply. Opacity is going to be more along the lines of maybe like 75. That's too much. Let's do about 50%. And once again, I pressed enter when I shouldn't have. So let's go back down to drop shadow. 50%. The angle, I'm going to be going something for about 15. And we'll bring this up to about 5 pixels. Size about 5 pixels. And now I have this nice little shadow for my button. So, of course, we're not going to keep it white, so we're going to go ahead and add a gradient overlay. And this time we are going to be doing sort of a deep dark red for this side and sort of a orangey color for this side, maybe a little bit darker than that. So it goes from a dark red to an orange. And I need to play around with this a little bit to get it where I want it. I'm going to move that a little bit back into the middle. And we'll just sort of, once again, you can play with the angles and the scale to get it sort of how you like it. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and added 2 other buttons. So I just duplicated the layer, like I showed you before, and I used the free transform tool, which was Control T, to move them up and resize them. So I have 3 buttons now. And so to keep things precise, what I should probably do is rename them. So that everything is clear. And I'm done with the buttons. So I'll go ahead and minimize them, get them together, drop them in a folder, and call it buttons. Let's go ahead and work on the face now. So I'm going to add a new layer. We're going to call this the nose. And we're going to use the pen tool now to do something along the lines of a carrot. So let's go ahead and zoom in with Control plus. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to sort of click and drag a little bit. Get something sort of carrot shaped. Doesn't have to win any art awards. If you don't like it, just delete it and try it again. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come down to my buttons and I'm going to right click on this one and I'm going to do copy layer style. And I'm going to come up to the nose and I'm going to paste the layer style. So it's going to take the layer styles we used for this. So it was the drop shadow and the gradient and paste it exactly how it is onto the nose, which is just sort of saves me some time. But I am going to go ahead and open up the gradient overlay and I'm going to do reverse, which is going to give me, it's going to trade places with the orange and the red, so I get a little bit more orange. And I might open this up and make this first stop a little bit less of a hard red. So I get more of the orange overall, so it doesn't look exactly like the buttons itself. So now we have the nose. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some eyes and a mouth. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. We'll just call this face for short. And I'm going to grab my brush tool, my paintbrush tool, which is nested with these other tools, the pencil, the color replacement, and the mixer brush tool. Make sure you don't choose the mixer brush tool by accident. And I'm going to go inside of my paintbrushes. You might not see this default list. You might actually see the last ones we used, which might have been the Halloween set. So if you want to get back to the normal brushes, just click Reset Brushes and click OK. Then you might be seeing something like this, which makes it kind of hard to figure out which one to get. I just did large list instead because I'm telling you to go ahead and grab the hard round brush, and we're just going to paint the eyes and the mouth on here. So I'm using the bracket keys to make the brush bigger and smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of eyes. And I like making that one a little bit smaller. It makes a little bit more sense. And then I'm going to get real small, and I'm going to make a sort of a smile, and in each successive dot, at least for a while, I want to get a little bit bigger, and then I'll go ahead and bring it back down. So you can go ahead and make your own smile the way you like it. In order to make the arms, we're going to use the line tool. So the line tool is actually with the other shape tools. So go ahead and choose the line tool. I'm going to change the fill to black. Stroke, I'm going to go ahead and change to black as well. And the weight, you want it to be at least 5. I might make mine actually 7. And then make a new layer called arms. And I'm just going to click and drag like this. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to make a couple of fingers. Just like that. You can always click on the shapes that you've made afterwards, and you can press Control T, the free transform tool, and you can move them around, resize them. You can actually rotate them like this to get the hands looking the way you want. Then I press Enter to lock in those changes. I'm going to go ahead and make a second arm using the line tool. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and take all of these shapes. So I click the top one, shift click to the bottom one, and I'm going to merge the shapes so that they are all on one layer. Just makes it easier. But once I do that, I'm not going to be able to change them as much as I could before they were all separate. But it makes it a little bit easier to navigate the layers panel at that point. The final step, if you choose to do it, would be to grab the text tool. Whoops. Do a Control Z there. Grab the text tool and draw a text box up here. Find the font you like that sort of says the holidays to you, whatever that means. There are a lot to choose from. Change the color of the font to whatever you want it to be. And I would change the size. You know you're going to want it bigger than like the 12 point it starts at. You might even want to make your own numbers, like 100. And then we can type in whatever holiday message you want to do. And I can move it around and put it where I want it. Now what you can do is go ahead and go to File, Export. We can export as a PNG file. Tell it where you'd like to save it. And that creates a nice little snapshot that can be viewed on any computer, whether or not that computer has Photoshop.